Most Canadian films have the odds stacked against them, but this Canadian film called the odds and found them in their favour. I'm Kinda Mardambe, and this is the Canadian Film Podcast. Today, I'm interviewing Simon Davidson, the writer-director of The Odds. It is his first feature film, and what I predict will set a precedent for Canadian films. The Odds distributor Kino Smith, in what was originally thought to be an overly confident move, submitted only one film into the 2011 Toronto International Film Festival. But after seeing The Odds and believing this to be my favourite Canadian film of the year, it would appear that Kino Smith knew they had a clear winner. The film opens on Friday, March 2nd at the AMC in Toronto and will roll out across Canada after that. I am a strong advocate of this indie film, for it takes audiences on an exciting ride unlike anything previously released in Canada. You can catch my and Trevor Albert's review of the film on our Canadian Film Review web show, airing on Tuesday, February 28th. In the meantime, listen to our interview with filmmaker Simon Davidson and find out why he decided to make a film about a high school gambling ring. So we're here today with Simon Davidson, who is the writer-director of a film that premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival called The Odds. He's a BC filmmaker. Simon, tell me a little bit about The Odds. Tell me about the premise of the story.
I guess the elevator pitch would be that it's a murder mystery that's set in the illegal world of teenage gambling. A 17-year-old high school student who's kind of embroiled in this world in a gambling ring loses one of his best friends, and he takes it upon himself to figure out who the murderer was.
And where did your inspiration come from?
To be honest with you, I knew quite a while ago, when I first started writing a story or coming up with a story, I just wanted to, write a story, a feature story, and I kind of had this idea that I wanted to explore a really powerful moment in the life of a young person. I had one of these moments when I was young, and this person is not an angel, he's not a devil, but he is definitely kind of heading on a downward path, I guess you could say, and something dramatic happens, and he has to make a choice. So he's going to go continue in this direction or head in another direction. So I knew I kind of wanted that, and I discovered an article about a Singapore high school gambling ring, actually, in which a 17-year-old student set up a gambling ring with his friends, and they were betting on NBA. He started loan sharking, and they started owing him a lot of money. And once the stakes kind of got higher and higher, he, instead of being cool and being a friend, he decided he wanted to get this money any way possible. He threatened their parents, he threatened them. So I found this world to be very interesting, so I started doing more research, and actually discovered, not exactly that thing, but I discovered a lot of sort of teen high school gambling rings kind of all over North America.
Wow. You had interviewed somebody in Toronto, a waitress who... Yeah. Tell me a bit about that.
I was in Costa Rica, actually, a couple of years ago, and just happened to run into, on my birthday, a couple from Toronto, and we got to talking, and she did waitressing. I told her a bit about the movie that I was working on, actually, The Odds, and she told me that she worked in underground casinos all over Toronto, actually poker rooms mostly.
Wow.
And so she was a waitress, and she literally served drinks and food, and she explained all about what they were like. And then when I got back to Canada, I gave her a phone call, and we talked, at length about what these places were like and what the vibe would be, and like who would be there, and what the sounds were, stuff like that. I found it really informative.
Wow. Now I picked The Odds as one of my top 5 best films, Canadian films at the festival this year.
Cool.
And we've put that down it's on the magazine. There's an article about it. And one of the reasons there were a few reasons that it was my favorite. Particularly the opening scene just really seemed to set the tone of the film. You set up this kind of gambling ring at a high school, and everybody's watching a wrestling match, but they're all on their cell phones, and they're making bets on their cell phones. It was a kind of a
Yeah.
great opening scene. Tell me a little bit about that.
That that scene. Thanks, by the way, for choosing it and for indicating that scene. That's a totally fictional scene. I didn't come across any reference to that anywhere. Kids betting on wrestling. But I think the impetus of that scene is the kind of the rush of it. The excitement of it.
Yeah.
I decided I really want to start the movie not with like a murder that would be the classical murder mystery. You start with murder.
Yeah.
I wanted to start with how and why these kids might enjoy getting into this gambling stuff. And that means like we got to feel the audience has to feel kind of a bit of the rush and excitement that they feel. I talked to a gentleman. I actually kind of talked my way into a Gamblers Anonymous meeting a couple years ago, and one of the guys told me that the first time he experienced gambling, he went to a racetrack when he was 17, and he said his heart just started pounding, and he knew that he was going to come back, and this was going to be the thing for him. And I kind of wanted that, I wanted to try and, I don't know if I was successful, but I wanted to capture that moment. And so I just transcribed that racetrack feeling into the high school wrestling, which makes total sense.
It really translated, because it reminded me of Rounders with Ed Norton and Matt Damon, like that kind of rich intensity. But then you have these high school students on their new technology. It just seemed like I don't know, maybe you invented something dangerous there.
I actually have had a few people tell me, "Oh man, I wish we had gambling rings in our high school."
Awesome. And also something that was kind of an earmark of that scene, but also throughout the film, was some really awesome music. Tell me a little bit about the music. I mean, it's so hard for an independent film to kind of get some great music, but tell me about how that came together.
I find music to be like one. I think I have a really good ear for music, and like I do editing as well, and I've just always been able to kind of, it takes sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's hard, but you just like experiment, and usually I can find the right piece of music for a scene. The really difficult part is when you work with a composer. I mean, for me, to work with a composer to try and like get the composer to, the composer's interpreting your vision and using, through music. And it's very hard for me to talk to him, explain to him what. I just find it a very difficult dynamic. So we put in a lot of temp music, and then he sort of, tries to maybe emulate that a bit, or just take kind of the cues of what I've put in and turn it into his own. In that specific scene, we used songs. Like in the first part of the movie, kind of the exciting part, or the part that I'm trying to set up the excitement that these kids feel, I decided to use all songs. So we were lucky enough to use a cool music supervisor who found us a lot of music that we could afford. And so that's where I found that music. And then after the murder happens, I'm not going to tell any spoilers here, but I decided to use all score. So the whole movie kind of shifts. Yeah. We go from songs and young, exciting vibe, and then after the murder, it's score, and it turns a lot more into the murder mystery part of it.
And tell me a little bit of the contrast, I guess complementary side of it, which was the look of the film. I mean, it didn't look like BC to me. It had a really nice, gritty, urban feel to it. Tell me about that.
That was all Vancouver. We shot, we didn't really, aside from the opening kind of wide shot, we didn't really select beauty shots per se. We selected, it's just all set in a suburban kind of, an East End sort of neighborhood. It's a really nice neighborhood, but of course we shot a lot at night, so that kind of gives things a little darker feel. And then my DOP, his name is Norm Lee. We talked a lot about David Fincher's Zodiac.
Oh, yeah.
which is a pretty dark film that was shot on I think the same camera that we used. And so we looked at that a lot, and we found out that they underexposed that film a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So Norm went ahead and underexposed our film, which I think gives it a kind of a unique look, which is maybe what you're reacting to. It doesn't necessarily make it darker, but it gives it it's very hard to explain. It gives it a very unique look.
Near to impossible to get feature films made out west. Tell me about the development of The Odds.
I feel kind of blessed, like at every stage that we progressed the story, Telephone was there or someone was there to kind of help us along. And so we got Telephone chose the movie and helped us develop it by, paying me to write it and giving us some development money to go and do casting sessions and stuff like that. So we did a couple of years of rewrites, and I did a lot of research and stuff like that. And then, I make it sound easy. Of course, it's not. There's frustrations in there, definitely. I ripped up a few drafts. I wrote many, many drafts. And so each draft that I would do for Telefilm, this is draft 2. Actually, that's draft 12. Yeah. And 6 of those drafts were like thrown against the wall. But by the time I got, I think, to the draft where I internally thought this is a draft I can shoot, mm-hmm. They got on board. Like, we submitted to them, said, yeah, we think we want to go to production with this. They had a few minor notes, and they said, yeah, let's do it. So I actually felt kind of blessed, in that way. I felt the struggle was me trying to get the story right and trying to, I decided I wanted to do a lot of research to kind of be honest. So I think the struggle was more that way than actually banging our heads against, glass ceilings or something. Mind you, we didn't have a lot of money either. Yeah. Like, we didn't finance this thing with millions of dollars. We stayed purposely kind of small, and we tried not to take a lot of development money, so we purposely tried to stay small so that we could have as much control of it as possible.
Mm-hmm. But the film looks like a grand scale. Like, it looks...
Thank you.
Considering it's your first... This is your first feature, by the way. I mean, this is, you've done, 3 or 4 short films before this?
Yeah, 3 shorts, and this is my first feature.
Unbelievable. So you really kind of made it look very, very epic, very kind of large scale, but I don't know, it had a nice kind of very professional look, but I think this will reach younger audiences kind of in droves.
Thank you.
So speaking of younger audiences, I think the cast is going to be a huge draw. Tyler Johnston plays Desson, and word on the street, which he said at the film festival he's heard 1 million times, is this is the new Tom Cruise. This is the budding, and his performance is very, there's a risky business type of vibe to it, but really what he puts to the screen, was fantastic. So tell me about casting him and Julia Maxwell and the rest.
Actually, Tyler, the role of Desson, the 17-year-old sort of detective of the movie, he's not just a detective. I will, spoiler alert, he's a bit, he's got his own complicity towards this whole gambling ring. So he's a conflicted character, but he's in every single scene of the movie. The movie is essentially told from the perspective of Desson. So when I'm writing the story, I was thinking, wow, we may have to do a lot of casting, a lot of auditions. We may have to go to Toronto, Montreal. Like, we have to go far and wide to find the person who can sustain the audience's sympathy and just interest for 90 minutes and be young, So I think at the draft 2, we hired someone to cast just a read-through for us. So we had 9 actors, brought them in, and they just read the script cold, and just so I could hear the dialogue and stuff. And it just happened that Tyler Johnson was in the role of Desson. And he just, something about the way he was reading, the way he just did it. He just breathed life into the character, even at that kind of cold read, early stage. And I was very intrigued by him, so I kind of had him on my radar. Mm. And I saw him in a few things, supporting roles, Less Than Kind, and there was a couple other kind of TV movie things. And I didn't know that he would be the guy, but I knew that he was interesting, and I kind of had him there. And then when Telefilm was making their decisions when we were ready to go into production, it just so happened they invited us to a casting workshop. And who was there? Tyler Johnston. And he, we were doing a mock kind of casting session, and he was awesome. He just, like, blew everybody away. And from there, I cast him for I did 2 test scenes we shot before we went into the movie. Mm-hmm. I cast him for the test scenes, and he was great. So I didn't even audition the role. He just took it,
Wow.
That was fortuitous. And everybody says he's the new Tom Cruise. That's true. I don't know if he's the new Tom Cruise. I think he has his own thing going on. I mean, he definitely has, like, when you see him on screen, not so much in person, when you see him on screen, he kind of looks like Tom Cruise for sure. But he's got his own, I don't know, he's got his own presence, his own personality. I think it's really cool. I think, I definitely think it's a nice thing that people are saying that. But, yeah, he's definitely one to watch. I think he's going to, I think he'll be doing more things soon.
Yeah.
As for the rest of the cast, we had a great casting director named Lynn Carroll, and she had just cast a couple of movies that used young actors. So she kind of had her finger on the pulse in Vancouver, and she just brought a lot of talented young people in front of me, and I sort of cherry-picked, kind of, and I ended up with some really strong actors. I'm really happy with the way it turned out.
Yeah, even the supporting cast was was really a strong cast too. Tell me, this is maybe a little to the side here, but where did you get the name DAVIDSON from?
I don't know.
It's a cool name.
I wanted kind of an interesting name that really wasn't, like Mike or John. Not that those aren't interesting, but we've seen and heard those before.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to make, I don't know, that's kind of the way I am. So there's actually a movie reviewer for the Washington Post named Desson Howe, and I kind of stole his name. I actually emailed him in and asked him how it was pronounced, because someone pronounced it decent to me, and I was like, I don't think so. So I emailed him. He said, no, it's Desson like lesson. Yeah, I stole his name.
Yeah, it's a very...
I should ask him to review the movie.
Yeah, it's a cool name, and I would definitely go back. There's something cyclical about that, so I definitely go back and ask for a review of the film.
I know, it's hilarious.
Now, I went to the public screening of this at TIFF, and the audience was perhaps one of the most enthusiastic audiences I've seen at the film festival, and I saw a lot of films this year. They seemed really engaged in the film and the story. Tell me about how the film festival has played a part in maybe promoting or giving exposure to the odds.
I mean, I don't think we can measure what TIFF actually has done for the odds. I mean, it probably does that for every movie, but we just from the moment they called us and told us that we were coming to the festival, we just kicked into high gear. We already had a distributor, so we sold Canada, so we knew we were coming out theatrically in Canada. But this kind of puts you on the map promotionally and puts the name The Odds out there for everyone to see. And TIFF, of course, is like the ultimate Canadian curator. So kind of having the TIFF stamp of approval or this TIFF selection to put on your poster means a lot, right? And they have, just going to TIFF. I mean, we did a lot of press that we would never have been able to get probably otherwise. And it really helped so that when the movie comes out, I mean, the big goal of any movie, including ours, is that when the movie comes out theatrically, people might want to come and see it and, pay their $10 and watch the movie and enjoy it. And I mean, with Canadian movies, of course, that is a huge task because we don't have marketing budgets, and typically it's very difficult to find Canadian audiences. So any help we can get is huge, and TIFF is just massive. Regarding the screenings, I was so enthusiastic about those screenings at TIFF. The premiere, granted, we were all a little bit nervous, and so it went very well. But I think we were just so nervous that we couldn't really relax and kind of take it in. But the next screening, the one you were at, I think on the Wednesday, we screened on an IMAX screen, which was fantastic. It was huge.
That was awesome.
Oh yeah, and the sound was just amazing. I was just totally blown away, and the audience just got right into it. Yeah. That was just like one of the best screenings I've ever had.
Yeah, that was brilliant. Like, I mean, you know, for the listeners out there, it was an IMAX screen and an independent film, and it really kind of it I mean, the irony was there, but it actually looked fantastic, and it did sound fantastic. So it was epic.
Yeah, I know. That's what, I had a friend in the audience who was an editor, and I was kind of nervous about what he was going to say. And he's like, "Oh, dude, it was epic," and I didn't really understand what he was talking about. But I think that's part of what he was talking about. Like, it was huge.
Yeah. Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, that was right. It was really good.
Tell me what is a Canadian film or a Canadian filmmaker that inspired you?
Canadian filmmakers. Well, there's a few. I mean, probably the biggest one, who actually might be my favorite filmmaker of all time. You know, everyone asks you, well, who's your favorite filmmaker? Who's your favorite film? It's impossible to say because there's just so many films and filmmakers. But one who I hold in like the highest regard is Cronenberg. You know, he's obviously a master. He makes movies not necessarily with. I think he uses an American model. He makes movies now for American studios, but he makes them in Canada. So I qualify them as Canadian films. And he doesn't write them, but he definitely develops them. So I think you know, he's a big inspiration for me. I watch his movies all the time, and I love just breaking down how he does it. Yeah. Other Canadian filmmakers I like. I mean, there's a movie called Passenger Side, which I really liked. Oh, yeah. By I can't remember his name, Bissonnette. I think it's Matthew Bissonnette. Then in Vancouver, we have all kinds of indie filmmakers. Carl Desai is a friend of mine, and he's so passionate. I really like trying to emulate his kind of energy and passion in getting movies made. And then there's a buddy of mine who actually edited District 9, who is kind of an inspiration for me too. He's just really, his name is Julian Clark. He lives in Vancouver, and he's like he now works for Hollywood, but we get together all the time and talk movies, and that helps inspire me into my new movies.
Tell me something about the Vancouver film scene that we maybe don't know. Like, has it changed or evolved? Has there been a recent shift? You know, what's something about the Vancouver film scene that maybe general audiences don't know?
That's a difficult question because we have a great out here, so we have great talents. I mean, you talk about the look of my film. It's the reason that is because you know, I had a really great DOP, a good production design team. My production designer was Scott Moulton, and just the whole crew. They just pulled together on a very limited budget to make this thing look great. So we have, and this is like, there were a lot of movies shooting last summer, so we kind of, you know, we had a real indie crew, and they were fantastic. So the crews who actually work on the like Hollywood movies, they're incredible. So I think we have a great kind of base of crew and people who are willing to do stuff. As far as indigenous production, like, it's tough, right? It's a tough world. Telefilm Canada has a very limited budget. The Western Office has like a really limited budget, so they can get behind a few movies a year, and it's competitive. It's a fight. I think if we can somehow get Canadian audiences to watch the movies, then I think we'll once that happens, I think we'll be in a lot better sort of place. I think it's good right now. One of the trends that I'm really noticing here in Vancouver actually is the production of super low budget movies. Carl Desai, I talked about him. His latest movie was really low budget. There are a few movies at TIFF this year from Vancouver that were just super low budget, meaning like $50,000 or something. Wow. That I think is kind of a new phenomenon, and I don't think it's just Vancouver. I think it's, you know, people who just want to make stuff and they're tired of waiting to try and get $1 million or $2 million, so they just go out there and make stuff. And I think it's awesome. It's just like, you go out there, be creative. The movies are cool, and you can make it look good shooting on like a still camera or something. But at the same time, I feel like, damn, like these people should be having like okay budgets, you know? Like,
yeah,
I wish that could happen, but it's just I don't know what the reasoning behind it is. I think probably a lot has to do with the bums and seats quotient.
And maybe that will, like you say, maybe that's the evolution. Maybe that's where we're headed. You start making, you know, some amazing films without the funding, and then the funding will come, you know.
Yeah, or hopefully people just buy tickets and come see the movies, and then, you know, maybe the model changes. I think we're very lucky. I will say, like, I'm not really complaining because I think we're totally lucky in Canada and Vancouver that we get to get funding for shorts. We get to get funding for our features. We can get these things made.
Yeah.
In a lot of countries, unless you know rich people, you cannot do that. So, I think we do have a good thing, and I think it's our responsibility to make cool movies and try and grab audiences somehow.
Speaking of which, how can Canadian audiences connect with The Odds? Do you have a website? Are you on Facebook? How can they find out when the film does come out?
We are on Facebook for sure. The Odds, just type in The Odds in Facebook and you'll find us.
Okay.
If you like us, then you'll get all of the updates. Right now we're updating our festival run, so we're screening in Sudbury this weekend. On Saturday. We're going to Busan in Korea 2 weeks from now. And obviously when we have the premiere or the actual theatrical release, love people to come up for that. So you can definitely check us on Facebook. We also have theoddsmovie.com is our website. And a trailer will be coming out, I hope, within the week.
Nice. What are you working on now? What have you got after this?
You know what? I have a couple of movies, and I'm really trying to focus on one, but I keep shifting between them. They're both kind of far along. One is a murder story that is based on a true story. One of my friends 6 years ago was murdered, and one of our mutual friends went to the police and asked them what was going on, and the lead investigator had actually gone on holiday, and the police told him, like, the guy skipped the country, he's gone, like, just go home.
Wow.
But he didn't go home. He made a phone call, and he found out where this guy was. And that's kind of where I'll leave it. That's called 6 Nights. And another movie I'm working on a couple of movies, but that's kind of like the most progressed movie I'm on. So I'm hoping to maybe start financing it in the spring.
Nice, nice. Well, thank you so much. This has been a real treat to speak with you. This is Simon Davidson, who's the writer-director of The Odds. We wish you all the best of luck.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
The Odds opens on Friday, March 2nd at the AMC in Toronto and will roll out across Canada after that. You can catch my and Trevor Albert's review of the film on our Canadian Film Review web show airing Tuesday, February 28th on Press Plus One at www.pressplusnumeral1.com. And don't forget to check out this movie at www.theoddsmovie.com. We want to hear what you have to say, so drop us a comment and let us know what was the last great Canadian film you saw.